That's right.
Okay, we're gonna reconvene the public session. We all set, Brian?
Yeah.
Super. Before.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're reconvening the public session. And before I ask for an election of a temporary chairperson, I do want to just take a moment and ask for a moment of silence in memory of Tara Saradakis. She is a parent of 3 of our students in elementary, middle, and high school. She was a wonderful mom, and we will miss her immensely. And I know I can count on the Bronxville school community to support the Saradakis family moving forward. So I do ask for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Back to the public meeting. Can I have a motion to elect a temporary chair?
Motion.
Motion to elect Mickey Kapoor.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mickey Kapoor, the gavel is yours.
All right. Should I jump in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As temporary chair, my only 2 duties here are to help assign a president and a vice president. So what I would like is a motion to nominate. We've had discussion around who should be the president, who should be the vice president. So I would like someone to nominate who we should have as our president. We talked about this in executive session. Do we have anyone who would like to nominate?
I'd like to nominate Susan Kniff.
Good. Yep. Any seconds?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Aye.
Good. And as vice president, we had discussion about this in executive session as well. Do we have any nominations for vice president?
I'd like to nominate Mike Brandis.
Any seconds?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Good. I'm passing the gavel back.
Thank you, Mickey.
You're welcome.
So now you get your oaths.
Take that one at a time. Susan Kniff, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of New York, and that you will faithfully discharge according to the best of your ability the duties of President of the Board of Education of the Bronxville Public School to which you have been elected?
I do.
You may sign your oath. And Michael Brandeis, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that you will faithfully discharge according to the best of your ability the duties of Vice President of the Board of Education of Bronxville Public School to which you have been elected?
I do.
Please sign your oath. And now the gavel goes to Susan.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry, Connie. Would you mind putting up on the screen the list of committee members? Oh, you're just putting up, okay. All right, so the board has discussed and reviewed the committee assignments. Do you need me to read the names of chairs, Connie?
If you could give me the names of the chairs.
Sure.
We'll go through them one at a time. Try to make this a little larger. So, let's see, I'll start with Finance Committee.
Pete McSherry will chair that committee.
And Negotiations.
I'll chair that committee.
Susan. And Audit.
Pete McSherry will also chair that committee.
And we have Facilities.
Eddie Lennon will chair that committee.
Curriculum.
Michael Brandes will chair that committee.
And we have the Athletic Liaison is
Sarah Kenny?
Sarah Kenny. PTA Liaison, Sarah Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
Foundation Liaison, Nikki Kapoor.
Yep.
Professional Development Liaison is Michael Brandeis.
Mm-hmm.
And Medicaid is Nikki Kapoor.
Mhm.
And Safety Committee is Michael Brandeis.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So now we just need a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion to approve the committee and liaison assignments for the 23-24 school
And
year.
just for the record, that those committees also include members of the administration. And I can flash that up on the screen for public.
And that list is posted with the agenda.
That list is posted.
Yeah.
But then I'll get the full list with the board members serving.
Okay.
on the board docs. Okay, so motion for,
Motion to approve.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
so now the next order is to swear in the members of the audit committee. And I think Susan, I'd like to use.
Yeah, Pete, this is for Pete. And this is for, I'm sorry, this is for Pete. And this is for Christina. Thank you.
So, Christina Skinner, Susan Smith, and Peter McSherry, please raise your right hands. Do you solemnly affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that you will faithfully discharge according to the best of your ability the duties of a member of the Audit Committee of the Board of Education of the Bronxville Public School to which you have been appointed?
Okay, we do.
I did.
Thank you. Please sign your oaths. I'll collect them. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Next order of business to adopt the calendar, right? Or the calendar of school board meeting dates for the 23-24 school year. Everyone's had a chance to review them. You've got them up on the screen. Are there any questions or comments? We've all had a good bit of discussion about that. Could we have a motion to approve?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sarah? Just raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, we have a list of annual appointments, authorizations, and designations. We've all had a chance to review those as part of the, as they were posted with the agenda. You want to throw those up on the screen, Connie? These are banking signatories, these are attorneys, and lots of other contractors and consultants. Were there any questions on that list?
No, but I can give a brief summary.
Great.
Go through real
Thanks,
quick.
Dan.
The independent, which is our external auditor, they're the ones who audit our books every year and help us compile our annual financial statements. The claims auditor, which is Tobin and Company, they're certified public accountants. They audit our check runs every couple of weeks. They come in and just compare invoices to checks and purchase orders and make sure nobody's charging us sales tax, just to get another set of eyes on all of our claims. Then we have an internal auditor, which is required by the state of New York for school districts of 1,500 students or more. And that's, it used to be Acume Partners, who were acquired by Cherry Becker Advisory, but we still have the same people in place. They conduct our annual risk assessment and our our focus audit every year, of which that is on the agenda tonight, and the board, the audit committee heard that in detail a week or so ago. Then we have our attorneys, Keen and Bean, for general education and personnel matters. They started with us about 6 years ago through an RFP process. Bond, Shenick, and King are special ed attorneys. I believe, Rachel, they've been with us for over 20 years. Oric, Harrington, and Sutcliffe serve as our bond counsel for any of our bond issues. And then we have a financial advisor who helps us structure our bond issues and market them, and helps us with compliance on an annual basis. Then we have insurance brokers to help us place insurance. And then obviously we have our medical staff and our architect of record, which we're proposing to be Land Associates. They joined us on our projects probably about 6 years ago through an RFP process, and we're very satisfied with them. And this architect of record as an annual appointment is a new thing this year. It allows Land, with that backing, to speak directly with the state education department on our behalf without having to get our permission every time, which I think is very important, especially going forward with starting to head into another building cycle over the next few years. So.
And Dan, this comes up every year. The financial advisor, they don't. My recollection is that's mainly about making sure we get all the state aid.
It's marketing bond issues.
Yeah.
It's not handling our money for us.
Right.
That's it. They advise us on helping to structure and develop our prospectus and marketing the bond issues.
Okay.
And they do a really good job. Our bond issues are always highly subscribed. I've been in districts where you're lucky to get one firm to bid on them. Ours, we always get 6, 8, 10 bidders on them.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Could we have a motion to approve this list?
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think we had Pete and Mickey. Next, we have certain policies we have to approve every year. Did we have any, were we gonna make changes to the investment policy, or are we gonna do that later?
There were no changes recommended in the current year, but I think the consensus out of the finance committee is that we should take a close look at them this year.
Okay,
Just because some of the language is outdated.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to get a bid on something, it had to be by telephone.
Right.
And most of this business isn't done via telephone anymore.
yep,
It's just outdated language, so I think we're going to go to the attorneys just to, go to current market standards.
okay.
Right. And we also talked about bringing some of our finance, our investments up to a level where we can invest for a longer term period, given where rates are today. And we may be able to find some beneficial some benefit to being able to lock ourselves in for 4 or 5 years. And I think we're gonna look at that for next year, is that right?
Yeah, we've
Dan?
already started talking to
Okay.
the banks we work with, you know, before we go a little further out and, you know, look for treasury bills, things
Yeah.
like that. Because if we could lock in a little longer, what everybody thinks over the next year is gonna be pretty close to the top of the yield curve.
Right.
You know, it would behoove us, because we do have a nice cash base.
Yep.
Really nice cash base.
Yep.
And CDs are at least in my lifetime high. They, so it's a really interesting time to potentially look at these and lock them in for a longer period of time.
Sadly, in my lifetime, your CD I
Yeah.
bought was 8%.
My first mortgage was about
That's
12.
an impressive number.
Yeah. All right, well, if there's no further questions on these 3 policies, and those are some great observations, so we'll work on that this year with the investment policy. Could we have a motion to approve these policies for the 23-24 school year?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thanks, Christina. All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Would you like to explain first the impartial hearing
Yes.
officers, Dr. Kelly?
Thank you. So as you know, there are many regulations that surround special education in our public schools. And this resolution is a requirement for boards to consider. And it's basically asking the board to approve the New York State Education Department list of impartial hearing officers. And that's in accordance with Part 200.2 of the Commissioner's Regulations. It's a rotating alphabetical list of impartial hearing officers that have been trained. And if there is a need to have an impartial hearing, we must go to this approved list.
Is this a subset of like a big list published by the state, or is this it? This is the whole list?
It's the whole list,
Okay, so we're just approving a list that the state requires us to use.
correct.
Okay. Doesn't seem like there's any discussion on that.
Nope.
No.
Could I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great.
And then another annual approval that I ask the board to consider this evening is the chair and members of our committees on special education and our committee on preschool special education. And this is a team of educators along with the parents that consider eligibility for students with disabilities. So the chair people that I'm asking you to approve would be Mrs. Christine Dowd, our Director of Pupil Personnel Services, and then each of our psychologists as alternate chairs. And then a blanket approval for any general ed classroom teacher that has knowledge of the student being discussed. So I ask you to approve those committee members for the 23-24 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna defer approval of the draft minutes to the next meeting, because there are a few things I think that still probably need to be, a couple things need to be revised. So next, we'll have a public hearing on the district-wide safety plan. If there are, will we have Vic present first? Yes, so Vic, thank you. Pranay, our Director of Security, will present first. We'll then have an opportunity for public comment, but for this public comment period, it should be limited just to this particular topic.
Just want to give you briefly an overview of the district-wide safety and emergency management plan. The plan is designed to prevent or mitigate the impact an emergency incident can have on the school community.
Do we think the internet can hear
Sorry?
what we're saying?
Just want to make sure you can be
Yeah,
heard
we just
out in
wanna make
TV
sure.
land too.
Yeah, there's many people listening online. Yeah, thank you.
I
Yeah, I know.
apologize.
Yeah, yeah.
The plan is mandated by state law. It describes in general terms what steps the school should take to prevent incidents and deal with emergency should they occur. The plan is designed to deal with acts ranging from bullying to natural disasters or man-made incidents. The plan is a public document, is posted on the school website. The plan is complies with state law and is updated yearly according to the changes implemented by New York State Education Law. The significant change this year includes the addition of the emergency remote instruction section, which essentially requires the school to describe when and how to go to remote instructions. The district plan is consistent with the building level emergency plan, which is a confidential document. The building plan expands on many sections of the district plan in great detail. That's essentially a quick overview of the plan, district plan.
And our district safety committee reviewed this plan. And as required, there was a 30-day, I was gonna say
Public
viewing,
comment.
a public
Public
comment
comment.
period. So this brings an end to the public comment, period. And for the board to consider adopting it for the 23-24 school year.
And that plan was posted on our website. Or is posted.
Were there any public comments?
None.
Thank you, Vic. So at this time, are there any comments, public comments on this particular topic of the safety plan? So if there are none, then may we have a motion to approve and adopt the 23-24 district-wide safety plan.
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Adopted.
Convening the reorganization meeting.
Okay. So, now we reconvene the reorg meeting, having had the public comment period for the safety plan.
The hearing. Hearing is now closed.
Hearing is now closed. Thank you, Connie. And we'll hear now from Dr. Kedke on phonics curriculum.
Thank you, Susan. So it's my pleasure to update the board on the work we have been doing around literacy and in particular phonics instruction. Phonics instruction involves teaching students to decode words, read them by sounding out individual letters or teams of letters. Phonics instruction also involves encoding, which is the ability to hear all the sounds in the word and write it. This is typically what we refer to as spelling. There are many concepts in phonics that students are taught in the Bronxville school in kindergarten through second grade. They include, but are not limited to, short vowels, digraphs like the TH in math, where two letters make one sound, consonant blends like FL and flop, silent E, bossy R like in car, where the bossy R changes the sound of the vowel, and even snap words, which are words frequently seen in print and often don't follow spelling rules that students must memorize. This year, we have conducted many assessments with our students to determine how they are progressing in decoding and encoding skills. Those assessments include, but are not limited to, phonological awareness, identifying words that rhyme, phonemic blending, which is where a child would say s, a, n, d, sand, developmental spelling assessment, decodable reading assessment, where students sound out words without pictures, including some real and some invented words, to determine if they can sound out the words without the use of context clues or pictures. TC running records, which assess reading levels and comprehension, and decoding and encoding snap words. In fact, I feel it is safe to say we have more data about our students' ability to read and spell than we have ever had before. In terms of our phonics curriculum, we utilize the following: TC Phonics curriculum for whole class instruction, IMSE, the Institute for Multisensory Education Phonics Curriculum for small group instruction in class. It's important to mention that both of those cover the same skills. However, MZ lessons are longer, up to 75 minutes of instruction, and will cover, for example, a blend like FL and FLOP for a full week, as opposed to TC, which would cover multiple blends during a typical week of instruction, which includes approximately 20 to 30 minutes of phonics instruction per day. For students in skills or with IEPs, they receive instruction in preventing academic failure, and both PAF and MZ are based on Orton-Gillingham techniques. A few takeaways from what we have learned from this year's data, because we are always using data to inform our instruction. In all 3 grades, there was a strong correlation between reading levels and decoding ability, meaning students who read on grade level A, B, C, D, E, etc. can decode. So this leads us to believe that students are not over-reliant on guessing, using pictures or context clues in order to read. An overwhelming majority of our K-2 teachers are supportive of the TC units of study in reading and writing. We make a distinction between the reading and writing instruction and phonics. Additionally, phonics alone would not provide a curriculum that would prepare our students for meeting the ELA standards in New York State, those of which they are tested on beginning in the 3rd grade. The question the data suggests is whether the TC phonics component provides enough support for students in conjunction with other intervention supports we have, both inside and outside of the classroom, including skills support, or if a more intensive phonics curriculum such as MZ is necessary for whole class instruction. Right now, all 1st and 2nd grade teachers are trained in MZ, with kindergarten teachers being trained this summer. In kindergarten, where students were instructed using TC phonics, results were promising. As an example, by June, approximately 90% of students across the grade level achieved mastery, as defined as 94% accurate, when decoding and reading consonant, vowel, consonant words with all 5 vowels. Spelling assessments were strong as well, indicating approximately 92% of students can spell with initial and final consonants in words that contain short vowels. In both 1st and 2nd grade, reading and decoding remained strong, with approximately 90% of students being able to decode and read at grade level. However, encoding, spelling data, in grades 1 and 2 were not as strong as reading scores. As a result, we will be implementing some additional spelling instruction into the 3rd grade that includes the PAF approach. 1st and 2nd grade teachers will assess all students in the fall with MZ, the more intensive curriculum, and utilize that curriculum for addressing gaps. Kindergarten will continue to use TC phonics and will be trained in MZ over the summer. We will continue to watch the data throughout the fall to ensure that our students are acquiring the necessary skills to both decode and encode. In Bronxville, we have an extremely strong practice around the use of data to inform our instruction, and it guides us in making decisions about the curriculum in general, as well as for assisting our students for whom extra support is needed based on assessment data, and phonics is no exception. I will continue to update the board on this and other data collected from the prior school year in my achievement report in the fall, or as necessary when we reassess the students in early September.
Thank you, Mara. Were there any questions at this time?
Maura, could you just address the fact that the Teachers College curriculum has been dropped in a significant amount of districts, including the New York City Public Schools, and your thoughts on that and why we're keeping it and the components of it that you like?
So I think that I know that the teachers feel strongly about the reading and writing units of study, and as I shared with this board before, since about 2014 to 2023, we've gone from approximately 70% proficient in ELA to upwards of 90% proficient, using by and large those units of study. I think they provide, especially across K to 8, opportunities for our students to engage in excellent argument-based writing work. The units are engaging and rigorous, and they are really, our kids do a lot of writing in these units. I shouldn't speak for the New York City Department of Education, but as a former employee of that organization, I think they do make decisions based on based on the neediest of those populations of students. And I think that is one reason that they're moving away from that, and they are really addressing a phonics program more intensely than I believe they ever have before. I believe, and the teachers I would assured agree with me, that we need to look at the phonics piece separately. But phonics alone will not prepare our students for the literacy work they need to do. And so the reading and writing units of study help develop our students' love of reading, understanding of different genres of reading, comprehension strategies, annotating text, and the writing helps them go through a process that they learn to write across different genres: narrative, informative, argumentative. I mean, our students in 3rd grade write a baby lit essay where they're saying this character, they assign them a character trait, and they use evidence from the story to support their thesis, their baby lit thesis statement. And I think moving away from some of that work would be a mistake, especially considering what we're preparing students for down the road. And I would just remind the whole community that our reading scores in the PISA assessment were among the highest, overall. And those are our 9th graders who are randomly assessed. We assessed about 75 of them with the PISA in schools. And PISA called Ann and I to ask us about our reading. So for me, this issue of K-2 and decoding and coding is one thing to look at. And I think there is strong evidence that the other components of the literacy program we have are working to our advantage.
Well, thanks for looking into it, because I know a lot of parents are concerned about it.
100%.
Appreciate it.
And this is probably an opportunity to emphasize with the community as a whole that if they have any concerns, certainly about their child as it relates to literacy or anything else, that they need to seek us out, come and speak to us about it, whether it's to the teacher directly, whether it's to the principal, even to Mara. So I want to, make sure that the, parents are aware that they are welcome to come in, and we will share all of the data, and help them make informed decisions.
Thank you. We have some financial action items, Dan. Personnel, sorry.
Yeah, personnel.
Personnel next.
So this is the time of year where I bring before the board the last of our new hires, and we have some new hires as it relates to all budgeted items. I'm sad to share that we have a classroom teacher resignation, and Derek DiRienzo. That's what happens when we support master teachers becoming leaders. Then they go out and become leaders. Sometimes they come back, so that could be some wishful thinking. But we wish Derek the very best as he begins an assistant principal role. There are a few leaves on this evening's board agenda, as well as a new teacher recommendation in Nicole Lepis, who will be teaching in 1st grade next year. This is also the board agenda where I asked you to consider our teacher mentors, our curriculum leaders, and our team leaders. We have a full year leave replacement to consider, one more teacher aide resignation, as well as 4 new teacher aides, again, all budgeted. We have an appointment of a substitute teacher. We have an internal movement of a school secretary. And then the stipend lists the board approves annually, and those rates are all had been negotiated and increased based on the negotiated rate. We also found a boys varsity basketball coach. From what I understand, that was a strong process and strong consensus among the committee.
Great.
So that would be items A through S, please.
Are there any questions or discussion on the personnel items? Can we have a motion to approve items A through S?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thanks.
No financial report yet. It's too quick. However, we continue to close the books 22-23 fiscal year. No surprises thus far. We anticipate being able to execute the transfers as proposed at the last meeting, thereby reducing the tax certiorari reserve, bolstering the teacher's retirement system reserve, and the capital projects reserve, as we discussed. And I expect to deliver a full report on the close at the next meeting in early September. We do have action items. I'll very quickly summarize action items A through F. A is the legal services agreement with Keene and Bean for the 2023-24 school year. B is accepting the internal audit report, which I discussed a little earlier on facilities and capital assets. There were no findings in that report. And as is consistent with past practices, when there are no findings in the report, we do not invite the auditor in to present that report. Just in keeping with time, the full report was made available to the board, and any questions were addressed with the auditor in the audit committee meeting of, I guess, about 2 weeks ago at this point. We have a donation to formally accept from the PTA. This is regarding the outdoor classrooms. It seems that about a year ago we accepted the foundation donation, but we did not accept the PTA donation. So we have to do that to show evidence of that from to the state education department in developing our project for the outdoor classrooms and getting it approved. I'll have a little more to say about this in the facilities report a little later.
Okay.
It's not great news, but something we have to deal with. D is special education services. We have a tutoring company with Westchester Tutoring Company for homebound tutoring services as needed for a total contractual amount. We just put an amount in there, $50,000. This usually comes in total, maybe $20,000, but you never know. And then we have Altaris, Vic, and the support Vic gets from Altaris, the proposal to continue their services for the supplying of Vic and all the back office safety, security, and emergency management coordination services. And then Arrow Security, who provides our security guards based on a GSA state contract which references the prevailing wage. And we're very satisfied with Arrow. They took over last year from Securitas, and we were able to keep all the guards we wanted to keep, and actually Arrow is paying them more and costing us less. So it was a great deal all around. And we're really happy with most of our guards. I'd be happy to take any questions on items A through F.
And you're going to talk under facilities about the outdoor
Yes,
classrooms?
yes.
Okay. If there's no questions, then could we have a motion to approve items A through F?
Motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Dan.
So moving on to facilities, we had a rain event. Always nice to be on the phone with Rachel and Mike Lee at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. We had an issue though, our pumps did not automatically engage, which they are supposed to do. We do have a protocol for that. You know, it's first Mike Lee and then Hara Aquino, who's our night supervisor, and then Joe Acevedo. And Hara got down here right away and turned them on. The parking lot emptied, which started to accumulate water, emptied immediately. So we're working through that with the manufacturer, Rain for Rent, why that did not happen.
So was the issue, Dan, that they didn't
What's
turn
that?
on?
They did not engage automatically. And we think, well, it's a little technical for me, but I think the water level inside the wet well didn't get high enough to trigger that automatically. And we don't, I don't know why, but we're gonna find out. We have a meeting scheduled on Thursday with representatives of the engineer, who designed the system, the manufacturer, and the village wants to get more involved. They are requesting that they be in on the manual engagement in case we can't get them going immediately for any reason. You know, we have our protocol, Mike Lee. If they're not available, our three guys, they want to be able, a cop to be able to come throw the switch or something like that, which to me makes a lot of sense. So we're going to meet with the village rep and get them trained, you know, their guys as well for any reason. But they should go on automatically, and we're going to address why that didn't happen. But we had no significant water in the building. We had some, I think it was window leakage from driving rain in the guidance area, but it was not dark water. It was cleaned up before anybody came in on Monday morning. So once again, thanks to the guys who come here overnight when it's pouring.
We had water in the new addition where
Yes.
guidance is?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's interesting, right?
yeah.
That's more worrisome than the pump thing.
Well, yeah,
That-
I could see old windows, but,
No, I think it's groundwater more than anything.
yep.
Because that guidance area is one of the lowest areas we have.
Okay.
That's right next to the old boiler room, which used to be the worst area. That was the lowest until we picked it up and made it into the Innovation Center. But it was really not that significant, nothing we couldn't handle immediately. And we get a little water through windows and kind of old slate roof leaks here and there throughout the building, but nothing significant. Our facilities committee met with Land Associates, our consulting architects, on June 30th to begin prioritizing the 5-year plan as a first step to generating the next infrastructure capital project. This will be ongoing over the next year with the new facilities committee. However, more immediate discussion revolved around the outdoor learning spaces and flood pump canopy alternatives. The outdoor learning spaces are an issue at this point because we're anticipating intense budget pressure related to construction inflation. The budget was developed probably 2 years ago at this point, and land is seeing that probably costs have close to doubled since then.
Wow.
Yeah. They just opened bids for something similar in the Marinick, and they were blown out of the water by how high the bids came in. So our current budget with the donations from the PTA and the foundation is roughly $300,000. And at the time, we thought that would be good for 2 classrooms. At the moment, it looks like it might be good for 1 classroom. However, what they're gonna do is break the bid down a little bit, maybe bid on them individually so we can figure out which one we might wanna target. And if we make them smaller, their thought is these things are not that you know, they're not that complicated. We might get smaller contractors wanting to bid on that. If it's separate, smaller projects. So that might help us work with the current budget as it is. But I think the consensus coming out of that meeting was most likely we're only gonna get one classroom, you know, before the end of September.
How many is Mamaroneck doing?
Theirs was an outdoor project. I don't know if it was classrooms, but it was something similar. It was more site work, like we're looking at. It wasn't building work. So I don't know specifically what they were doing. So we're going to get to work on that now that I can tell them that the board has accepted the PTA donation. We have funding. So we would anticipate approval coming within a week. Bids going out by the end of July, work starting by the end of August. And again, this is not complicated stuff. It's nearly 100% site work.
So we don't have another meeting until September 6th. So will the facilities committee meet?
No, we'll have to schedule a special meeting where we can get a quorum of the board together just to accept bids. There'll be no other action except bids.
Okay.
And it'll be whoever's in town.
Okay.
And I would say that probably is gonna happen late August. No, I'm sorry, early August.
Okay.
And then we had a lot of discussion around the designing and, you know, design choices for a pavilion over the flood pumps. There were a few, you know, bad, better, best choices, and I think we came to a consensus on the middle ground there in the pavilion design. However, you know, the cost for that is even more significant than the outdoor classrooms. So we talked about what would be the most logical way to fund something like that. And the quickest thing we could probably reasonably do, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a standalone referendum for, you know, maybe a $500,000 or $600,000 project, is to put a referendum question on the May budget vote. And then we could put the pavilion up that summer. And the referendum would be, should we tap our construction reserve to build that? And then the facilities committee and the board can decide, if we only have enough money for one outdoor classroom, we may want to piggyback another outdoor classroom, because that's another project that would be, you know, packaged and ready to go as well at the same time.
Okay.
So that's, you know, going to be more immediate work for the facilities committee over the next few months.
Yeah. So maybe when they're there on Thursday, it'll be an opportunity to talk about that shelter.
Yep.
And whether that might have any connection to,
Yeah, I
the
don't
pumps
think it has any
functioning.
direct connection to the automatic engagement
Yeah.
of the pumps, but we'll certainly mention it.
yeah, okay.
Did you share the options with the full board, or was that just the
No,
facilities committee?
we sent those out to the full board in June,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, the one we kind of narrowed it down to, at least to begin with, was it was the pavilion style, but without the walls. So it's kind of the middle price point. It
Yeah.
gives you a lot better protection, and it looks a lot better than the two cheaper options. And the way that the architects thought that they could segment the roof would allow them to bring in a boom and kind of pop off a section without having to dismantle that section. They would just lift it off, and then they could lift out the pump if they had to replace, or if they had to fix a pump and they had to pull it out and do it off-site. So it's definitely more appeasing to the eye for some of the folks that have to look down on it, and the roof would not have to be changed out, whereas the two less expensive and less protective options, you're potentially looking at having to change out the roof at some point during its lifetime.
Yeah.
So it made the most sense when we were talking the other day, but you guys should look at it and weigh in.
It looked consistent with the architecture of the school as well.
It does, yeah.
Yep. I have one more piece of information. Bird Bus Sales and Chevrolet are building us a 16-passenger van, which should be available by the end of August.
All right.
Fantastic.
We need
So
one.
we were able to find one,
Wow, fantastic.
and we're getting it new, so
Great.
it should last a while.
And you're getting your license, right?
That's you, Eddie.
No, Mike Finley and Jen actually said they were gonna get theirs in.
They committed, that's right.
Yeah.
That's all I have for special.
Thanks, Dan. That takes us to our calendar. You know, I realized I had a few things to say, but there's no agenda item for remarks by the board president. If it's okay with my colleagues to add that agenda item here, then I will say a few things. I know it's not a big group here, and I don't know how many people are out in TV land, but it's possible people may watch it later. So I just want to welcome our new colleagues. I want to comment on a few things from our last meeting, and I want to introduce some goals we've discussed, or will discuss more for this year. So I want to start by welcoming our new board members, Sarah Kenny and Christina Skinner, and to express how much we all look forward to getting to know you better and working together this year. And it's customary to have an orientation for new board members. That's something that's sometimes happened and sometimes has not happened. But I'm very pleased to say that we've agreed as a group to hold an off-site orientation and board retreat with Dr. Kelly and a facilitator in September. And I'm very appreciative that we agreed to do this together and believe it will be a worthwhile investment. Now, one of the topics that we're going to cover at that session will involve the different hats that we wear as board members, parents, and community members, and the importance of being clear about which hat we're wearing in our interactions and conversations. And this came up at the last meeting. As I mentioned at that meeting, the board president's responsibility is to represent the whole board, or as it's commonly called in writings about public school board best practices, the collective voice of the board. And that's not always easy because we don't always agree completely, and sometimes our collective voice sounds a little awkward. That was pointed out also at the last meeting. But we do our best to arrive in a place that we can all support and communicate as a collective view. Also at the last meeting, I was asked to express my personal view on the topic, and I answered because the question was asked very respectfully by a student who thoughtfully made that distinction when she asked the question. But in general, I would not presume to use a Board of Ed meeting as a platform for my personal views, nor would my colleagues expect me to. So while I'm happy to discuss my personal views outside of these meetings, I won't, and we shouldn't do that on this platform. Also at our last meeting, there was some frustration expressed during the public comment period with the board's communication around the DEI dialogue and process. I'm also aware there's frustration with the pace of this process. And as the person charged with representing the work of the board in this and other areas, I take some responsibility for that frustration, and I want to take a few minutes to try and do better. As was communicated in June, the board is in agreement that a separate standalone DEI policy is not the best fit for Bronxville. It's not that we haven't considered it or reviewed the New York State model policy or reviewed policies in place in other districts. We have. We've looked at policies, mission statements, other districts' websites for public schools, private schools, higher ed, all in search of best practices. We even asked candidates about this topic during the superintendent's search. There are some districts with policies, some have board statements or mission statements. It really does vary, and there's a lot of confusion about how policy is implemented and enforced. We have something in Bronxville that we believe is better, excuse me, and around which we believe there is much common ground in the community, and that's the Bronxville Promise. We began communicating about this last winter at our regular meetings and at 2 workshops we held on continuing the DEI conversation in Bronxville. We played back what we heard, a desire for more visibility of these values and a bias for action over words, and we've tried to be responsive. Following the March listening workshops, the board asked Dr. Kelly to consider enhancing the promise to include more language around diversity, inclusion, and belonging. A few board members have also drafted a statement on belonging, which we read at the last meeting. And we asked Dr. Kelly to consider, along with her team, whether that statement might somehow become part of the promise. Dr. Kelly's work with the faculty, staff, and leadership team concluded on June 30th. She's giving them the opportunity for one last review and will share their work with the board by next week. The board will then have an opportunity to digest, reflect, and offer feedback on that work. And we expect that the revised promise language will be shared with the community in September, and there will be an opportunity for community feedback. After a period of community feedback, the board will consider adopting the promise language as policy in the philosophy section of its policy manual. I emphasize we'll consider. That's not something we've had much of an opportunity to discuss and agree upon yet. Why September? Why has this process taken so long? Now, if the board were to finish its review and we're ready to share sooner, there's no reason why we couldn't share it sooner, but we also don't want to rush something out there during the quiet days of summer that doesn't get sufficient attention and engagement after coming this far and trying to consider broad input. Now, taking a step back, why has this process taken so long? If you look back at the timeline, we began in the spring of 2022, and we're talking about trying to have some sort of a result in the fall of 2023. So that is 18 months. But we had an initial process, and we heard the community's feedback that there wasn't sufficient opportunity for everyone to weigh in. And so we did hold the workshops in March. When we began to coalesce around the idea of improving the promise rather than reinventing the wheel with a separate policy, the board also recognized that the origin and value of the promise is an organic part of the district's culture, and we respected Dr. Kelly's recommendation that any changes to it start with the internal team. And so we have respected that process, which is concluding this week. As a practical matter, there are very few days in the calendar, especially toward the end of the year, when the faculty can all be together for an exercise like this. So yes, it takes time. So even though the process has moved slowly and deliberately, it's because we've tried to be thoughtful and collaborative about it. We appreciate that in emphasizing and communicating the common ground that was influencing our direction, we didn't sufficiently communicate about the options that we had moved away from. The moment at the June meeting when someone asked about policy and Dr. Kelly clarified that the board had concluded a separate policy was not the way to go did have the feeling of a gotcha moment. And as the person responsible for communicating on behalf of the board, I regret that. We'll keep trying to do a better job. As part of that, I want to call attention to a new page on the district's website called Belonging in Bronxville that contains information about all of the work that has happened to date on this subject. I just want to emphasize a few final points. The decision to not create a new separate policy isn't because we don't care or consider this an important topic, but quite the opposite. We believe the process we've had here in Bronxville is better. We believe the outcomes will be better, and we believe that incorporating these values into a document that is already at the heart of our school culture will create better visibility and opportunities for living and demonstrating them by our students. Finally, we've had some discussions with Dr. Kelly about goal setting for the 23-24 year. We'll continue that discussion at our board retreat, but wanted to share where we are so far. We'll continue to focus on improving communications, including but not limited to the website update, the continued promise in action presentations at board meetings to bring more visibility to the important values of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Dr. Kelly will continue to invest in her strong community relationships with the police department and village government, and the board will support those relationships as well. We have a Bronxville Teachers Association contract renewal coming up this year that will require focus by the negotiations committee. Our facilities committee will begin the process, as Dan referred to, of prioritizing and refining the $48 million of building needs identified by our architect last year. We want to be ready to present those priorities to the community when interest rates start to come back down, and we're ready to finance them. We will continue to encourage multi-year strategic discussions around financial planning at our budget workshop, something that our colleague Mickey Kapoor has encouraged us to do. And we are resurrecting the board's policy committee to do a review of the policy manual, a need which became apparent as we became more familiar with the sections on philosophy and student conduct. We will spend some more time on our goals at our September orientation and retreat, but needless to say, we look forward to the 23-24 school year. We welcome all input, and we wish everyone a great summer. Is there anything I'm missing? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much for indulging me with that time. Our next meeting, regular meeting, is Wednesday, September 6th. We are having our board orientation and retreat on Wednesday, September 20th, and then we'll have another regular meeting on the 21st. We will now open the meeting to public comment.
Can I just interject one thing?
Yeah.
I just noticed that the policy committee that we're resuming was not on the list, so we can't, and I believe it would be you, Susan, and
Pete,
guys.
Michael, and Pete McSherry.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
And the chair would be?
Pete, you want to take that on?
You were asked for more responsibility, so.
Hey, do you want to, are you,
Oh,
I'm already head of audit and finance. Do you want to be head of this? Head of 3?
Oh,
It's a little bit too much power for me, I don't know. I can be that committee if you want me to, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and again, on that committee too, there are members of the administration that are serving, the superintendent of business, our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, the director of human personnel services, and our principals. So, can we just vote to approve that?
Yes, could we have a motion to approve the policy committee?
Oh, gosh.
All in favor? Oh, sorry,
Aye.
second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
whatever you wish for.
Get that done quickly.
I just want to encourage, in the public comment session, just a reminder, it's an opportunity for the board to listen and hear. It's not really an opportunity for debate, whether between board members and community members or among community members. And we also always want to encourage, when there's an issue that you feel strongly about, to come to the school with that issue. If it involves your child, see the teacher. If you're not satisfied, see the principal. If you're still not satisfied, Dr. Kelly. You'll get much more immediate results that way than coming to us. Because again, we're here to listen. We want to hear, but it will take some time for us to be thoughtful in a response. And so if we don't respond at the board meeting, that is why. And with all that said, are there any public comments? Yes, Don.
I would just like to say I'm glad the board allowed you your time in adding the agenda item, and I appreciate your comments very much. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have 3 short questions. One on the new hires, one on the Westchester tutoring, and one on the 6th grade language. I know Bronxville just hired a math coach. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that one of the new hires? I just don't know the job description and if he's from K-12 or how he'll be filling in. That's number 1. Number 2 is who is eligible for tutoring?
can we provide some clarification, or do we wanna?
Yeah, so the tutoring is specifically for those students who, mainly due to medical issues, cannot attend school. So we still have an obligation as a public school to educate them. So for students in kindergarten through 6th grade, it's 5 hours a week. And for students in 7th through 12th grade, it's 10 hours a week. And again, we require medical documentation, and it's typically for a short amount of time. Perhaps as someone's recovering from surgery. So that's what the purpose of homebound tutoring is.
And then the math coach?
Yeah, so the math coach, gosh, 5 or 6 years ago, we hired a literacy coach, and we've been very pleased with that structure and that model. So we recommended to the board to introduce that same model for math. And so the main focus will be kindergarten through 8th grade, with the purpose of making sure that at the bare minimum we're meeting New York State standards, but then also that there's vertical and horizontal alignment, and that our kids are very well prepared for the highest levels of math as they enter into high school.
And they often co-plan with the teachers, co-teach with the teachers, model best practices for the teachers. So they are in classrooms working alongside teachers to get them their instruction in math, as best as it can be.
That's good to hear. And then the last was the language, 6th grade language selection.
I believe the 5th graders have already made those choices. They pushed in, some of the teachers pushed in to talk about their programs, and they've selected and been scheduled.
So there will not be a rotation in the fall.
Thank you.
Any comments in the queue? All right, can we have a motion to adjourn the reorg meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Aye.